Welcome back to The Agenda with your Missoula County Commissioners. I'm Juanita Vero, and I'm here with fellow Commissioners Dave Strohmeyer and Josh Slotnick. And today, our guest is none other than Mayor Andrea Davis, the 52nd Mayor of the City of Missoula. So welcome.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here with all three of you.
Yes,
Super
so
excited.
great to have you here.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Andrea.
Great to be here.
So I'm dying to hear, how has this time been for you as mayor so far? Has it lived up to its expectations? Any surprises that you've discovered?
Well, most definitely. I mean, I would say that I knew it was going to be intense, the amount of issues that we'd be working on, just knowing from the community and campaigning, all of the things that our constituents are passionate about. You just don't know until you're in it how much the city government, as I'm sure you can relate to, is involved in and with, whether you want to be or not. Right? I mean, there are things that are germane, that are core business, and then there are things that constituents bring to you that they want your help solving, whether they're in your jurisdictional decision-making space or not. We are the people that are closest, elected officials that are closest to the folks in our community and communities. Also because I'm the most recently elected mayor after our longstanding Mayor Engen. There has been a very great interest and desire by community members, business leaders, other elected officials, constituents, just everyday folks that want a chance to sit down and talk about their concerns, talk about their ideas. And so the intensity of the schedule is something that you can try to prepare yourself mentally, but nothing you really can until you're in it.
So no truth to the rumor that every time someone says it's like drinking from a fire hose that Dale Bickle has to drink. He has not been able to leave his office.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. The other thing that I think it's a welcome surprise, I think that folks expected some change with my election. And so as we've been working on a few things, and I know this is maybe something we'll talk about a little bit later, but I've had the opportunity to be working with new leadership in council, and city council have been interested in doing some things differently to help improve the participation and the way that city council meetings and just the support that we can give as the administration to city council, and as they as a legislative body can help continue to make policy decisions on the ever increasing issues that come before them. And so that's been really welcome. And to a large degree, I think it's because people were ready for some things like that.
So fill us in a little. Maybe I'll learn something that I was doing wrong a decade ago when I was on city council. So,
one of the things that I think helped coming from the private sector, quite frankly, I was with Homeward as an executive director for 15 years, and having run board of directors meetings and having been participating on so many different board of directors meetings, I was always evaluating how things could run. Do we need to make changes for the way things are run? And, I've been participating in city council for the 22 years I've been in the affordable housing industry. And then I've been, of course, paying more keen attention as I was a candidate and now presiding over those meetings. And I was really seeing sort of over the arc of time how there had been the way that the meeting agenda, the city council agenda was set up, that it was difficult for the council to get to the core business of that city council meeting. And truly, that's what the city council meeting is. It's the city council business. It's not
because the meeting opens with public comment on non-agenda items.
On non-agenda, non-scheduled items.
Okay.
And the public and our constituents are, I think, hungry for that opportunity
to engage.
But it also then alienates others that wish to come and be part of the city council, the business discussion, the things that are scheduled on the agenda. And so there had been a couple of things added to the agenda because of the pandemic and then just never shooken off. So it was clunky. And you could tell that it's been impacting even some media coming to city council because they did not know when they would be able to cover agenda items that were scheduled and noticed on the agenda. And because it's in the evening, they were not actually coming to cover local government, which is very concerning. So we generated a bunch of ideas that, staff have been participating, but city council leadership as well, and worked on basically a reordering of city council. We reached out to other cities around Montana to see what they were doing and brought those ideas forward. And so the first part of the city council agenda is all about the sort of the administrative items, minutes, and those kinds of things. Then we have special presentations, so that might be our neighborhood councils or proclamations, or this evening we have partners in the community that are helping install Narcan machines around the community, so we have that resource available. That's at the head of the meeting, and so that, again, for folks that are depending on knowing when they're going to be part of a scheduled agenda item. Then we roll right into, so that's part of a city council business, and we roll right into public hearings, which again, core part of business, needing to make sure we take care of those, especially because we have a certain statutory obligation to make sure we see those through in a certain time period. Then the consent agenda and the regular business. And then we move on to, and public comment is all throughout that whole process. So public comment starts with the
on
public
agenda
hearings,
items.
on agenda items. And then we roll into public comment on non-agenda items. And then the mayor comments and city council comments are right after that. So that informational section really is all actually lumped together. And in some ways, it then allows us as elected officials to respond potentially to some comments that were made, because that was the other disconnect I was seeing, is that people would make comments at the very beginning of the meeting and then they would walk out. And I was like, oh, but if they only knew what we were doing to help alleviate their concern, or that their idea was heard. So I'm really hoping that this actually creates a better demonstration of the responsiveness of local government.
So you spent the last 15 plus chunk of your life working on housing, really becoming super fluent and a statewide expert, a regional expert, really well known across the area for your expertise and leadership on housing. So you're talking about housing all the time. Now on any given day, you may talk about 6 or 7 or 8 radically different subjects. It could be public health to public works, and then the next thing you're doing, you're talking about homeless encampments, and then planning and zoning, all in the same 3-hour span. Have you noticed a change in yourself? Have you begun to kind of change because of the job?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that is a natural tendency of anyone, an elected official, and I would say especially, yourselves included, because, again, of the myriad of issues that we handle, and it's not like maybe some of our national cohorts where you have like a whole another level of staff on a specific issue, right? That you are jumping from topic to topic without the ability to really prepare for that. I depend on staff to bring me up to speed on things, because I can't spend the time personally as much as I'd like to be able to prepare for those meetings from meeting to meeting. So what that has required me to do, and something that I learned in mayor school, as I call it, when I went to the Harvard Local Government Academy with the Bloomberg Philanthropy, provided that scholarship, and I went out there. A lot of it is strategic scheduling and making sure that we are finding time, like 45-minute meetings, if at all possible. It's hard to do because most people think they meet on the hour, but it gives that 15 minutes of buffer time. It gives that time to have a personal break. It gives that personal time to check your email quickly, or really quick if you have to get something done, which you do. I am definitely having to be incredibly intentional about personal health and mental health, and that's an ongoing work in progress. Just making sure that we're finding a little bit of time to take a walk if you can, or breathe. But that is definitely something that I would say I'm adapting to all that, and I'm learning. Like, that's a very big professional growth. You bet.
But back to the housing piece, anything that's have your thoughts changed on housing?
I mean, they haven't changed. I think what makes me feel almost more anxious is that local government and the city, right, in the city or the county, we aren't able to just turn the dial back on housing prices. And I think that there could be some conceptions out there that I may be able to control more than I can because of the distinct background that I have and the expertise I have in that realm. The work that we're doing to update our different host of codes, so we have a unified development code, will be something that's foundational for the city, because not only will it be, all of our codes will basically work together, and so we'll be able to streamline process. It'll be more helpful for our staff, and certainly be more helpful for the public, including the development community. And that in and of itself will be, obviously it'll be monumental for Missoula. It's interesting once you're in the position to recognize all of the public process that is involved in something like that and the amount of work that's required. And from the outside, you just want things to happen faster. And so that's something for me in the housing realm, realizing I want things to happen faster than they can. The other part of, we have an affordable housing trust fund at the city, and, I'm eager to see the sale of some of the properties that we have on the market to fund that. So when I hear from constituents and hear their ideas, which it's like, we're with you on this. We're 100% with you on this, and we just don't have the resources to make that happen yet. But we are doing some things that are really pretty remarkable right now. The legislature expanded the definition of eligible uses for tax increment financing, and they allow workforce housing. And so the Missoula Redevelopment Agency has created a policy. Tomorrow they'll be hearing on a project that will be, if approved, the second project funded literally in the last several months. But at my time as the mayor, and that's very meaningful for me because to see legislation crack a resource loose like that, and it's a local resource, which we don't have many of, to actually see that in bricks and mortar and creating homes that are affordable into perpetuity is super exciting. Yeah, I mean, I certainly felt the pressure and felt that at Homeward as the executive director. And then I guess seeing it across the board and seeing like, man, how can we just, move some more of these toggles so we can, affect affordability up and down the whole income spectrum. Just feeling the pressure of it is a little bit more.
So you can spill some dirt on the Scott Street Rivara project. How do you pronounce that? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Rivara. Yeah. So that has already been funded. So that's super exciting. I mean, in my career, that project, which was the old White Pine Sash site in Missoula, there were multiple attempts, and that Northside neighborhood had worked for decades to get that piece of property cleaned up, but it was held in private ownership, and there was all sorts of environmental regulatory realities that were not making that possible. But not for local government, but not for the city of Missoula, that property would still be sitting there as an abandoned piece of industrial wasteland.
Well, I can remember back in the day while I was on city council, actually, where there were those voices, not from the community so much as from industry, that was not real wild about cleaning it up to residential standards. And I think this is a great case in point where going the extra mile to do both the right thing and also the environmentally safe thing is yielding results, and that we were able to turn this site that had been used for industrial purposes for a very long time into something that's actually safe for people to live on.
The benefits of doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Smurf it Stone.
I want to be clear for listeners that the project, the old White Pine Sash site, that has been cleaned up to residential standards, and it wouldn't have happened but for the neighbors being so incredibly persistent with the state. Actually, we all partnered, right? We all partnered and said, yeah, we want to make this happen, because that is a big piece of property right in the middle of the north side that has the opportunity to be a thriving part of the neighborhood, which it will. We have now turned dirt, and the Missoula Redevelopment Agency has done a few things. First, it used tax increment financing to buy the property. That's, of course, a longstanding eligible use of tax increment financing funds. Now we are putting in the necessary infrastructure to actually build the vertical structures, the homes and the retail that might be available on that site. But because this workforce housing initiative has been made possible through recent legislation, and the MRA, Missoula Redevelopment Agency, has passed a local policy here, we are actually able to take tax increment financing and invest it in workforce housing. And our workforce housing policy is one that wishes to keep those homes affordable into perpetuity. We don't want to just see the first generation of folks benefit, because we just don't have enough resources to do that. And so how we're able to achieve that on this site is the building of a community land trust. So the first phase of development on the Rivara site, the Rivara development on the Scott Street site, Rivara Partners is the private development partner, is we're building the largest community land trust in the state of Montana. Half of those homes will be market rate, and half of those will be income restricted for people that are earning a range of incomes from 80% of the area median income to 120% of the area median income. So that's a really wide range of incomes for people that are earning their wages in Missoula, and differs per bedroom size. A community land trust is where the land is held in trust, and then the home buyer only purchases the improvement or the home. And that's what really helps it be affordable, but it also helps it be affordable for the next home buyer.
Are there appreciation caps?
There are, and that is how you can ensure affordability into perpetuity, missing middle housing. That's why we need to make sure that there are the next homeownership option for folks that are moving from a community land trust into the next affordable market option. That project is underway. And then there'll be another 230 apartments that are built, conventional market rate apartments, and a city park and sidewalks and bike lanes and all sorts of things. Those 230 apartments will not be funded by Missoula Redevelopment Agency Workforce Housing, because that is conventional market rate project. The project that comes in front of MRA tomorrow will be another private developer bringing forward a project. They are looking for this workforce housing subsidy, we could call it tax increment financing, but the quid pro quo for us as taxpayers and residents is that there will be deed restricted homeownership options for folks to actually get into.
What are you going to set the AMI at?
Well, the workforce housing policy is 80% to 120%, so it's really what the developer brings in. My understanding is they're looking at And I might have misspoke there. There may be actually rental projects as part of this as well.
So
85% of the area median income. The market can't touch that right now.
no, so the rules, when the legislature said, now you can use TIF to do workforce housing, they put in that 80 to 120%.
They actually allow 60 to 140%.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Why is
Great.
that? Because every market is different in Montana.
That's
and
actually-
the local cities and constituents know what they need best.
Characteristically wise of them.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say go to 200% given
Well,
what the market is right now. And I feel like we're just in a whole new territory right now.
yeah, exactly. We really are. We really are.
You've convened a group to talk about encampments for people who are living outside.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's fantastic. Brought all these people together. How's it going? What are you learning?
Yeah.
Where do you see these conversations going?
I'm glad you asked about this because it was something I was hoping to have the opportunity to do once I took office, because I had heard from people, not only current city council members, but also people in the community that felt like they just wanted a voice at the table to talk about this incredibly complex issue and topic. And we convened a working group of city council, which doesn't typically happen. You know, city council has their committee meetings on Wednesday, but to step outside as a full body and have a working group is not very typical. So we have a professional facilitator that is leading the charge on this, Ginny Tribe. And she said you cannot have any more than 25 people. Well, with 12 city council, the mayor, and a municipal court judge, that leaves 11 community members. And so we were very thoughtful. We took ideas from all of city council, but then also folks in the community that we work with across the board, from business representatives all the way to service providers. And so we have folks that represent the business community. We have folks that represent the unhoused tenants union. So folks that are actually currently living unsheltered and houseless.
It's great. Those two next to each other. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, that is something
really
that's
good.
really not been done before. And also social, service providers and neighborhood representatives. And the idea and the reason that I really wanted to see this happen was because there is just so much misunderstanding across the board, or maybe not really truly understanding different perspectives on this. And the city is kind of stuck in the middle, right? And, we are expected to be responsive in a very difficult situation that, as you know, the 9th District Court of Appeal rulings have
Boise.
basically, and Boise and Grants Pass have basically made the city the provider of last resort in some ways, right? But without the resources to do it. It's really created a lot of misunderstanding about what we can and can't do and what we should do. And I think a lot of why I wanted to see this move forward is just that we had more ideas at the table. There was a greater understanding of the opportunities, the limitations, and where we might go from this. The whole point being is that the city council has a current ordinance. It's been for 20, 30, 40 years. There's just no camping in the city of Missoula. That's our current ordinance. We want to update that to be more in line with the 9th District Court of Appeals rulings. There is guidance to help do that. At the same time, we've heard from many community members, including those that are unhoused and represent those that are unhoused, to say, well, what can we do to help folks if they can't access the shelter that has been provided through the Johnson Street Facility Emergency Shelter and Poverello Center, and other folks that are providing services for folks that are and housing for folks that are living houseless. This is really a conversation to say, how does the city respond in a regulatory way? I see a combination here of a regulatory response in a way that also brings about programs and practices that may be city-led and involved, but also our private partners and our service partners in the community, including our faith-based community, who are very interested in figuring out how they can provide meaningful solutions here. I'm very hopeful that there will be both will come forward, that will have a make sense regulatory response that provides public health and safety for all Missoulians, and that we also have the ability to help those that are most vulnerable figure out a safe place to sleep and also connect with services and hopefully eventually, housing. So we're starting out with 3 to 5 meetings. We're on our third this Wednesday, the 27th of March. We have city staff there as resources. There are public, of course, are invited to come. They observe and then provide comment at the end. And I think at the end of the day, this is one of it's way to shed light on the topic, understanding the complexity of it. And I'm hoping to come up with a host of solutions that are more community led.
I was just going to ask that. Is the objective to update the ordinance you mentioned, or more than that?
More than that. The objective is to produce actionable recommendations to city council.
Right.
And that likely will, what does that look like? That's probably a regulatory response to some degree, because we have to update our camping ordinance. But also that might mean that if, for example, one of the programmatic, or what should I say, maybe like a program or a practice that comes out alongside of that by our private partners, like the faith-based community. Some folks in that faith-based community have indicated they want to open up their parking lots to a small number of people living in cars and RVs. This is something that's been practiced all over the country, and this is where the public and private sector comes together, because there still is a regulatory way in which we make that a workable solution, and that's through permitting, because obviously it might create more concern if there is not a limit to the number of folks that do camp in parking lots, and so that's a best practice around the country. So if we have a group of folks that say, okay, we're willing to do this, but what's the city's involvement? Oh, the city's involvement would be in permitting, and that's part of our regulatory response to something that is also a private solution. So I'm hoping that we're going to come up with a number of different kinds of solutions that would really help. Obviously we want to reduce to what we call functional zero homelessness, which means that as people are entering homelessness, somebody else is exiting homelessness. This is a situation that we are going to be living with for a long time, as we know. A national issue.
Yeah, every population center in the country, if not in the world, is dealing with people who do not have a place to live. And it's kind of an unusual quirk of politics and of our time that we who work on the local level are dealing with the consequences of whatever kind of cultural and policy machinery it is that creates people who have nowhere to live. Yeah. And I'm hoping at some point our federal government begins to craft a larger plan and get some aid out to local governments to help to deal with this, because I bet you guys will come up with something fantastic. I'm fully serious. I bet you'll come up with something really cool having those folks, all those people together. Hopefully we'll be able to be involved in something like that. And yet next year and the year after, there will be more people living outside.
Yeah. So I guess on that point, because we don't live on islands that are completely separate from one another, or in silos, or whatever metaphor you want to use here, what sort of conversations do you have with mayors and other municipalities in Montana or beyond, because clearly if a jurisdiction in the state of Montana makes the conscious choice, and here I'm thinking counties or municipalities, makes the conscious choice that we're not going to invest in resources to address houselessness or homelessness, what that means is that the problems do not go away, but folks are going to seek out service-rich environments, whether they have roots there or not. So what are you seeing across the state with your counterparts, if anything?
Yeah, I would say also my previous work as an executive director of Homeward, I was seeing this issue crop up in every urban center in Montana. And so whether you have the service-rich environment or not, people are living houseless in all sorts of communities. Billings and Missoula have, I think, a higher number because we are the two largest cities in the state, and we do have more services, including just hospitals, things that are your basic services, let alone services for folks specifically for, like mental behavioral health care or substance use disorder treatment, for example. I mean, I can tell you that I was, right as I left Homeward, we just completed the financing package to create 25 permanent supportive housing homes in Great Falls. I have only had one meeting with counterparts of what we call the Big Seven. We're only scheduled every 3 months, unfortunately, so I'm waiting for the next. But I can tell you that this conversation, I'm on 2 different mayor groups across the country. One was a group of colleagues that I met as part of the Harvard local government program, and the other is a group of women mayors, actually. So many communities of every scale are dealing with such significant issues in this space. I think it's a reality that when you live in a city like Missoula or Billings, where you do have greater number of services, you will see people coming from smaller areas in Montana to be able to connect with those. But it is something that I have asked for our local Montana League of Cities and Towns, and to really start working this up the chain to the National League of Cities and Towns in terms of a greater amount of federal and state response to help localities manage the situation, because it's really pretty difficult.
Yeah, a couple of winters ago, if I remember right, there was a point in time count for people who were living outside in Kalispell and in Missoula. And in Kalispell, they came up like 7 fewer than Missoula, which means per capita they had more, and it's not a service-rich environment at all. So when we talk about services, I would like, for the purposes of conversation, just to expand our definition. There are formal and informal services. Obviously, formal services, we could fill those in. Informal services are what happen at any population center in the United States. There is a lawn to sit on where you will not be bothered at the courthouse. There is no such thing in Big Sandy. There is a bathroom at the transfer center and in the courthouse. There is no such thing in Big Sandy. We have a gazillion, not quite a gazillion, a few less restaurants in Missoula that have dumpsters behind them. We have a park system. We have a river running through this place. We have a law
Costco
enforcement.
and hospitals.
All of these things create a wake behind them. Society creates a giant wake. And if you have nothing, you can live off what you find in that wake.
Good way to
These
say
are
it.
informal services that are attached to every population center, regardless of the formal services you have. Case in point, Kalispell, where they wrote their now famous letter that said, if you build it, they will come, so we're not building squat, and then nobody will be here. There are people there because of those informal services that are associated with a population center. Just wanted to say that.
Well,
That's well said.
And I think that hits on a point that you raised, Andrea, in terms of if you look at another community in the state of Montana, our largest city, Billings, it is not as if that community is bereft of folks without homes or without houses. And I do wonder if, in the spirit of myth busting, there's more that can be done to drive home that point, because you would get the impression from some folks that by virtue of the fact of us being a politically bright blue dot in the state of Montana, that somehow that is the reason why they witness homelessness in our community. Well, the reality is that makes no difference. In fact, the largest city in the state of Montana that can hardly be characterized as the bastion of liberalism, it too struggles with this very issue.
I would say a
definitely.
Tuesday night, downtown Billings, you would see more people who obviously are living outdoors than you would in downtown Missoula.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's where their missions are, and and while their housing market has gotten tight, as everywhere in the state has, comparatively to places like Bozeman and like Missoula, the median home sale value is quite different, actually. So it's interesting, the myriad of different issues that relate to somebody entering into homelessness and then the ability to get out of it.
So one other housing question. I just can't help myself because we have an expert here in our midst. I've said, we have national demand and we're attempting to meet that with local supply. We'll never build our way out of this. Though we should try, it'll never happen. Recently, we were looking at statistics this morning. The rental market has softened so much it's now in the, quote, healthy range of over 5% vacancy. A couple of years ago, 0.5%. Wow. Did we build ourselves a version of a solution, or are these all rentals that people can't afford? I don't know the answer, but just driving around town, you see for rent signs or even bonus rent here signs that a couple of years ago we wouldn't have seen. Do you think this points in a direction for home ownership? Could we gain more ground than maybe we had thought just through construction?
Yes and no. I mean, I live in the central Missoula. I live in the Franklin to Fort neighborhood, and that's been, more of what's been deemed a working class neighborhood. It's something that where there were more affordable home options, more affordable rentals for a long time, and it's shocking what just went on the market for over $600,000. And so I see that, and I get a little depressed. I mean, that's what makes me think, like, has anything changed since I've become mayor and my thought around housing? I see that and I go, what are we going to do? That's that pressure I feel. Like, I feel, like I'm responsible for that. But I think that you raise a really good question, Josh, because the housing market is never static, and we are a growing community. And so we have built a lot of rentals, and there are, for all the people that applaud that and welcome it, there are as many people that, of course, are frustrated with change that they see in Missoula. Whether those homes are affordable to the people that are renting them is a question mark. I will say that, in a state that's a non-disclosure state for home and mortgage transactions, but really as far as sort of lacking a lot of data around this. Missoula Organization of Realtors, in my opinion, has some of the best data collecting in anywhere in the state. Having done development all over the state, I would say we're in a better case in Missoula. But landlords aren't required to report their rent, and so we don't really know the question to that. I would say, though, if they're, if we're in that healthy 5% vacancy, that we have, and the city has committed to evaluating data as best as it can with what's reported and what we might see out there as far as number of apartment homes built, rental homes built, and current rents, to evaluate, are we meeting our goals, our absorption? That's always a moving target because population shifts and change and economics change. For home ownership, I think we can get there with different market forces. I also think we have to be really intentional about creating opportunities for the kind of homes for purchase that we call that missing middle, because the jump to the $600,000 bungalow that I just saw in my neighborhood that I would never be able to afford in my professional career right now, I think to myself, like, how did this happen? And of course, this is the case with most desirable places to live is, in the urban core where you've got walkable neighborhoods and you're closer to services and activities. That's where people want to be. So that's what the demand is. And I think that if we are more intentional about ensuring that both through the market being able to deliver on that, which code reform is part of that, but then all of the other strategies that we have in our affordable housing policy that actually ensures some level of affordability, so there's a step up in this missing middle, I think we're still going to have to be very intentional about that, because I think homeownership in particular is challenging because of just where the current market still stands. But I'm hopeful that we can get there. We have to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
And the city and the county are not, we're not responsible for that. And I think it's something that we need to make sure that we're always really clear about with the public is that we are an important partner in that, but we are operating within the market environment that is a capitalist system in the United States.
Yeah.
So we're doing our best through incentives and regulation and working alongside the private sector to try to make all these things happen.
Well, a great example of that. This morning we were briefed. The commission was briefed on a few things that will be coming before us for action in the next few days related to extensions of phasing plans for subdivisions.
Major lots of houses.
So first off, there are a lot of entitled lots out there from subdivisions that we have approved in years past. So there's not a huge shortage of available lots. But what we oftentimes are not infrequently hear from folks is that we in local government, city, county, are getting wrapped around the axle of regulation and impeding folks from creating housing and slowing down the final plat approval of subdivisions. Well, what we've seen as recently as this morning is that the reason why many developers are coming before us requesting extensions on implementation of their subdivisions and final plat approval and phasing of their subdivisions has everything to do with market forces, the personal lives of developers that have kind of gotten in the way of them implementing their projects, and way less to do with us creating roadblocks. So I think that's an important narrative that needs to be told.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I really like what you said too. These decisions and this whole world lives in a specific context, and Dave just said it really well. We can set the table, but whether someone wants to sit down and eat or not is kind of up to them. I'm talking about in development. Interest rates being super high right now, maybe it's not the right time to borrow many, many millions of dollars and take a big, massive risk.
When we've had so much inflationary changes on materials and of course, labor. And
labor, yeah.
The things that
So
we continue to try to, we try to provide those carrots, right? And that's, what we, with the limited resources that we have as local governments, to continue to try to get creative around some of those things. In 2019, the city passed an ordinance that incentivizes contractors that bid on city projects to have an apprenticeship program.
I remember that.
And we just recently approved a project that is a sidewalk project. And what it does is it basically gives credit, because obviously as public entities we have to take low bidder, and we had a bid for a sidewalk project, and it's allowable under Montana law, under municipal code, to allow for a credit to be given when this contractor has an apprenticeship program that basically reduces their bid, and in this case made them then the lowest bidder. So that means they were awarded this project. That means that folks that are learning the skills necessary through a formal apprenticeship program will get the city job. And those are the kinds of things that we can do, coupling hopefully with the private sector. Again, unions are very on board for making sure that they are training the next generation of laborers, and then the private sector when it comes to general contractors and such. But also, the work that we do with non-traditional folks, like we know that we have done through the Great Cities Good Jobs program,
work with
Mountain Home.
Mountain Home. Yeah, getting folks that may not traditionally be involved in the trades, and through our local institutions like Missoula College, so we can make sure that we are helping people see that doing this work is meaningful, it is valuable, and it is good paying living.
Yeah.
But that is a change in our society,
It's a
demographics,
cultural shift,
and a
for
cultural
sure.
shift. Yeah, that impacts all of this.
Yeah.
So it's great having you, Mayor Davis, in our palatial, opulent 1960s era law office here on Pine Street, and looking across the street, there's the City Council chambers. And there was a day, it's been thankfully many years ago, when West Pine Street resembled more of a chasm or a moat, in
The
which
DMZ.
you picked the analogy, where maybe city-county relations were not as close as they are today. And as my colleagues are probably sick of hearing me say this, the city of Missoula actually is in Missoula County, and there are portions of Missoula County that are in the city of Missoula. There are portions of Missoula County that are outside of the city of Missoula. How is this, in your first few months in office, how has city-county interaction struck you, and what opportunities, I guess, do you see for moving forward collaboration between our two jurisdictions?
First of all, having worked alongside government in all the years that I did, and having some professional experience before taking office with this newfound relationship, has resulted in very tangible things this community has benefited from. You as a body having taken the chance that you did to make a big move, which was to donate 5 acres of land to help the Trinity Apartments project actually happen. And out of those total, on 2 different sites, that one of which was not donated by you, but out of those 202 apartments, 30 permanent supportive homes were built. And when we were talking about the homelessness crisis earlier, and we were talking about the real challenge that is, those are homes that folks that have been chronically homeless, that have no other housing solutions, right? These are folks that have basically burnt every bridge when it comes to getting a Section 8 voucher or, rental reference or credit. So this is the kind of housing made for them, because we know that when people get a roof over their head and the support needed, that's when they can start to get their life back on track. And that means that they're visiting the emergency room less. That means that they're engaging with law enforcement less. And they're making relationships again, which ultimately means that they're happier, healthier people. And I think that's what our goal here is, right? So you did that. And I can say that as somebody from the private sector working in this space, what an amazing thing that was. So I knew taking office that this was going to be a fantastic opportunity, because you are like, how do we get to yes? How do we make these things happen? So I've known that going in, and I will have to say that I have had city staff members say, this has been such a remarkable opportunity for us, people that have been with the city for a long time, because they've said this is a real change in how we work together as 2 local governments, right? We work in partnership together, knowing that we may have distinct responsibilities, and that we do, right? Obviously to our constituents and our particular areas drawn on a map, but we partner in so many different ways because, like you said, our worlds intersect completely. And as a growing community, we have to be paying attention to how the city and the county, literally have shared boundaries together. And even though there may be an actual city boundary, obviously residents don't necessarily see that. They don't feel that. And so it's like, how do we have a kind of a seamless way that we're providing our constituents what they need for a good, healthy environment? And I think a lot of that is the willingness of the people in the seats that we're in to say that we're going to figure this out, that we respect and want to work together, and that we have common goals. That's my perspective.
That's great.
No, it's
super great. So before we close, we're going to ask you this question we get to ask everybody. It's one of my favorite ones. If you wouldn't mind sharing with us some nugget of wisdom you've come across in the recent past, it can be from a book, a podcast, anything you like. What do you got?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, let me tell you what podcast I'm listening to right now. Dolly Parton's America, and I highly recommend it.
Okay.
All right.
It's on Radiolab. It's wonderful for so many reasons. It's a fantastic podcast anyway. I love it. But this one is an 8-part series.
Oh, I did hear this one. Jad
Appamrob.
I can never say his name.
I think I might have just
something
say
like
it right,
that.
but
It's a couple years old.
It might be.
It's really good.
It is a couple
really
years old,
good.
but it's really good. So I'm listening to that right now, which is really fun. And then I was thinking about what you just asked, which is like, well, was there some wisdom from a book you just wrote? I did not. But that I just read. I just finished reading Braiding Sweetgrass, which is also a few.
Everybody loves that one.
Wow, beautiful. I think about, and I always mispronounce, so I looked it up as I was waiting for our podcast to start. I was like, what do you call that again? I'm going to definitely mispronounce this, but one of the tribes in that area of, like upstate New York and that region in the Northeast, I think it's the Haudenosaunee, and they have a Thanksgiving.
Haudenosaunee.
Haudenosaunee.
Way to go,
Thank you,
Strohmeyer.
our local historian. Thank you.
Yeah.
Haudenosaunee.
Yes.
Okay, well, they've got a Thanksgiving address Greetings to the Natural World. And it's everything like the people, the earth mother, the waters, the fish, the plants, the food plants, the medicine herbs, the animals, the trees, the birds, the four winds, the thunders, the sun, grandmother moon, the stars, the enlightened teachers, the creator, and then they have closing words. And I won't go through all that with you, but I thought that perspective is one that really helps anchor who we are as humans and how we can better relate to the world around us, and sometimes realizing that there's teachers all around us. So that's one of the things that was really an enjoyable read. And the other thing that, because we talked about this earlier, I thought I would mention is that I'm reading a book right now called When We Walk By. And it is I'm like just a little ways into it. It's about homelessness and the way we can look at the issues, but really the people differently in ways that not only as local governments and service providers and, governments all the way up the chains, but like everyday people, how are we helping people reconnect? It's a message that is coming out of this book, and it's something that I've heard from other colleagues in this space, is that social disconnection is really the underlying issue for so many challenges, and really recognizing, that homelessness is this word that we've been using more normally, intersectionality, that it is the intersectionality of multiple systems crashing together and really failing for the person.
And economist Bryce Ward just talked about that specifically, like that loss of that social capital.
Yeah. So it's it's a good book to I think.
I'm sorry. So When We Walk By, and
When We Walk By.
Who's the author again?
Yeah, I don't. I'll take a picture and send it to you.
Donald Burns and Kevin Adler.
Yeah, that's it.
Nice.
And then one I brought in, I just wanted to mention this because this is something I think is really fun to read. And it was given to me by Jeff Badnock, who's involved in local civic life for many years. It's called Palaces for the People, and it's Eric Kleinenberg. It suggests a way forward, believing that the future of our democratic societies rests not simply on shared values, but on shared spaces. The libraries, child care centers, churches, and parks where crucial connections are formed. And
goes back to that social capital connection.
Yeah, exactly. And this is he said this is for the mayor's library, but there's no reason you can't check it out for the mayor's library.
So many good books.
When we have time to read them.
Thanks so much, Andrea, for
Thanks
joining
a ton
us
for
today.
coming
Thank you.
by.
I hope we get to do this again soon.
We
Yeah,
will.
for sure.
Okay. Thanks so much for everything you do.
Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to The Agenda. If you enjoy these conversations, it would mean a lot if you'd rate and review the show on whichever podcast app you use.
And if you know a friend who would like to keep up with what's happening in local government, be sure to recommend this podcast to them.
The Agenda with the Missoula County Commissioners is made possible with support from Missoula Community Access Television, better known as MCAT, and our staff in the Missoula County Communications Division.
If you have a question or a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email it to communications@missoulacounty.us.
To find out other ways to stay up to date with what's happening in Missoula County, go to missoula.co/county updates.
Thanks for listening.